and welcome to the FCS Lifecycle Lunch and Learn. Today we'll be covering service. I know we're excited about this part of the life cycle, and we hope you all are too. My name is Madison McDonald. I'm the marketing manager for Java Trade Technologies, and I will be moderating today's session. On the agenda for today, we have some team introductions and housekeeping notes. Then we'll get into the intro to the FCS lifecycle. If you've missed the previous parts of our webinar series, we'll kind of go over everything about FCS and its lifecycle. And then we'll talk about shifting from budgeting into service and how service fits into the FCS lifecycle. And then we'll talk about how FCS makes service easy for both clients and techs. And then we'll kind of discuss creating recurring revenue opportunities, going over maintenance agreements, and then take a look at the RTM report. And then kind of go over how FCS allows you to become your client's roofing department. After that, we'll go into a quick demo break. Zach will kind of show you guys a lot of this stuff in action. Then we'll go over some key takeaways, and then we'll have a couple minutes for some Q&A. So team introductions, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. Zach Carpenter is our senior account executive and the founding partner of FCS. He's known for delivering customized solutions, building strong client relationships, and helping roofing contractors streamline operations through our powerful software platforms. John Kenny is the CEO at Cotney Consulting Group. Prior to that, John had 45 years of experience in the roofing and construction industry at every level. He's worked for multiple top 100 roofing contractors and is intimately familiar with all aspects of roofing production, estimating, and operations. We're very excited to have him join our Lifecycle series, so thank you very much, John.
Pleasure.
Just some housekeeping. Guests in the chat are automatically muted for the webinar, but you are very encouraged to ask questions throughout the session in the questions module, which is shown here, or if you have the older version here. Only the panelists and I can see the questions that you ask, and at the end of the discussion, we'll answer as many questions as time allows. If we don't get to any, they will be addressed in the follow-up email. So at this time, I'd like to pass it over to Zach and John to kick off our Lunch and Learn.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddie. Always great introductions. You always do a good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course. John, thank you, man. Always a pleasure to get on and do these with you. As for everyone joining, we're continuing our FCS Lifecycle series. We've been going over this the last couple months and kind of walking through each of the stages. We started with inspections, moved on to budgeting, and here we are today looking at the service component of it. For anyone that's new, that hasn't been with us throughout this series, you'll be wondering, what is the FCS lifecycle, right? And the FCS lifecycle is a business framework that we built the software around. So the goal of it is to help contractors, navigate away from doing more new construction or public bid type work and migrating into more of a privately negotiated market where they can create predictable revenue. So through that model, the goal is to be able to connect your inspections, your service process, your roof replacement process, and the reporting to help you have like a single ecosystem that keeps your clients engaged with your business long term. So it's not just intended to be software on its own, but more of a repeatable strategy to help you guys drive sales and drive retention with your customers. So that's where we're excited today to focus on this next step. As we go and look at where we are today, segueing from budgeting into the service plan, this is where we're going to start to really connect the dots with everything. Inspections showed us what needs attention and help bringing these defects or issues to our customers. Budgeting helped us define and project and get work approved. And services where these items are going to start to come to life, right? It's where you're able to take the budgets that you've set and the priorities that you've outlined and then move them into approved work and transition them into service tickets and work orders and facilitating that process with FCS. It's really the transition that turns your planning and everything from budgeting and inspections into revenue, right? And I know, John, you've run this model. You're doing this series with me. for the last few months. But tell me a little bit too about your experience of kind of taking the budget concept we've had before and how it's worked for you and segueing into service. You've had a lot of success in this.
Yeah, sure. No, first of all, you got to understand the mindset. You're not following the life cycle
Right,
process, and basically your service is I fix leaks.
right.
And where this takes you away from that mindset and puts you into a mindset that you're a full service division within a company that only not only drives uh, dependable, repeatable, projectable revenue,
Yep.
but it also becomes a driver of a big profit center. So this is where service starts to take you into that next phase of taking what you've done in the very beginning and really being able to put together that non just T&M type of mentality of fixing leaks. This is where you get to take it to that next level.
And that's a big part of it, right? We've talked about through these different stages about becoming more than just like a commodity-based contractor, of trying to become and we'll talk about this later on in the presentation, but become the roofing department for your customers. And at the end of the day, like you just said, service is ultimately the heartbeat of customer retention, right? And it's important that you get every leak, every repair, have it tracked, have it documented, and not just for accountability and paperwork standpoint, but for visibility for your customers through that trust and through building the relationship, right? You want to have transparency. You want to continue to provide the best service as you can, with those clients. As we start to migrate through and think through service, what have you seen of being some of the key indicators or key points of how a well-running service department can help increase revenues within a company?
Well, to start out with, the way to look at it is if you're looking at it from an owner's point of view, the
Right,
owner that's calling you in to fix a leak, now they're expecting that you're capable and you're going to fix the leak, or they wouldn't have called you in. Now, that's
right,
not saying a lot of roofers can't fix a leak, and I can say that from experience of being on that end.
right,
But the point is, that's what they're expecting. So that doesn't separate you from any other roofer that's out there at all. That's
right.
where you're in a category. But where this takes you when you start to get into using this whole model and using this concept is what you do with it when you gather this information. You're taking care of the roof and you do become a partner. And it's not just a cliche to become a partner, because the whole
Right.
idea is, let's face it, to keep a customer is so much easier than try to keep going out and finding somebody
And
new to
find
come
new
in
ones.
and do it.
Yep.
And they
That's what
become
they
a
say is
partner
the
for
easiest
life.
person to sell is someone you're already doing business with.
Exactly. And that's what this does. And that's what you got to get into that mindset. It's a
Yeah,
mindset of, this is my group. This is what I want to work for. This is where I want to be. Now, I know we'll get in later of the different ways we can track with KPIs, and that's a whole
right.
nother conversation today, but that's the next level past that.
Absolutely, right? And we talked about, connecting with your clients, but a big part of it is being able to make it simple for your customers as well, making it easy for your clients to do business with you. During the budgeting topic, we talked about the client portal and introduced that a little bit, and how much of a game changer that can be to be able to brand it to your company, and the trust that it places within your customers, that when you give them that level of visibility, it just is going to reduce the amount of times that they're calling your office, that they're emailing your office. It's going to help shorten pay cycles, help you guys get paid quicker. Overall, just increase that process and build that trust. And that's just one facet of it, right? Service is a very transactional business. There's, especially in the middle of let's say a rainy season, depending on your market, there's a lot of tickets, there's a lot of pictures, there's a lot of data that needs to be collected. And so that's where I see, from the customer standpoint, you can leverage a lot of this technology, to make it easier for them to be able to have that visibility, but then also make it easier for them to buy from you. And on the flip side of the coin, that takes you down to all the additional information that your technicians and your people in the field have to be able to have access to, or that they're going to have to collect and that you're going to need access to. So you need to be able to have techs collect before and after pictures. They track travel time. Then you need to be able to document the materials they used on the job. And then you got to somehow translate and keep up with the history of all of this. So I've seen And I'm very interested in hearing more of your perspective on this too, John. But I deal with contractors every single day that are trying to figure out how to get into service, right?
Mhm.
They want to, especially I see a lot of residential contractors that want to migrate into a service model, but it can be so intimidating because of the amount of work and everything it takes to track and keep up with this, and then provide consistent communication to the customers beyond that. So I know you do a lot of coaching. You work with a lot of these contractors. How popular would you say that migrating in and trying to get new service departments off the ground has been for you in your consulting capacity lately?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more. Um, I don't want to say that it's not really demand, but I'm seeing a lot more
Yeah,
interest, a lot more movement. That's the
right.
best way of putting it into that, because they're realizing that there's a better way than just being a commodity, especially in the residential field, of putting roofs down and being dependent totally on the customer's needs. So
Totally.
moving into the commercial end, we talk about easy for tech. So one of the things that I like to go over whenever I'm working with any client building a service department is there's two factors that have to happen. One is you still have to be trained to be able to fix the leak. Because if you can't get
Yep,
beyond that, everything else goes out the door.
exactly.
The other one I get to is usually have a two-partner team on most all commercial, um, you know, service calls, which you
Yep,
should, to cover it. One person can be the really good leak finder and fixer, and the other person can be the person that's trained on the technology, right? It goes hand in hand. Doesn't necessarily mean if I got it, looking at it, well, I've got companies coming in and say, you know what? I got Joe here. He's one of the greatest roofers in the world, and he could fix any leak in the 10 different systems, but he cannot deal with technology. He doesn't want to deal with
right.
it. He doesn't want to have it. So that's when you get him and say, look, how about we put somebody with Joe that can actually handle the technology, take that off of Joe's plate completely. Joe concentrates on what he does best, and let's have this person concentrate on what we need to do to keep the customer in within their pipeline and happy and secure and getting what they want out of it. That's the whole key, is giving them what their needs require.
That was a big reason of why FCS is even in existence, was a challenge of trying to bridge the gap between the guys in the field where roofing actually takes place and the admin needs that are required from all this documentation, right? So you got, everyone will see as I start to go through the system, I'm going to demo our service module and show you kind of what a field tech can see from the application out in the field and their perspective. But a big part of it is trying to make it easy for them, simple clicks, very linear, just click the next button to fill out all the documentation, is extremely important of being able to have that. So, like I was saying, that's a big reason we even started FCS in the first place, was bridging that gap. So, it's always been a big thing for us where we try and just make it as simple as possible as we can in the field. And as we go and start to segue into the next topic, before we get to doing the demos, is starting to talk about recurring revenue. And so you've got good processes in place that make it easy for your technicians to document the work, to communicate with your customers and provide visibility from that. And then we start looking at trying to become scalable, right? We want to look at being able to take this service and create repeatable income streams for the business. As we start to look at it with services, every time you're called out on a service call is a touch point with that client, where you have an opportunity for additional interactions or additional upsells, or items that can keep your crews going and keep people working year round. It can help the company improve forecasting, and ultimately, though, the big part of this, and what segues into the next part of the life cycle, is that this service work, while all the benefits it has, ultimately it can then lead to larger capital projects, right? And so these short-term repairs eventually evolve into longer term relationships, and that's the reason we want to do it. And service is profitable. You make decent money in the service department. Again, like we talked about, helps improve the relationship with your customer, but the long term aspect of it is to be able to earn that trust from your client, so that you can create this predictable revenue. And I know you teach a lot about this, and we were kind of touching on it a little bit earlier, but you're a big component of teaching this mindset, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first thing I get when get a whole group of people together that are gung ho jumping into from residential, and I want to use that, or startup commercial companies.
Yeah,
They're really going after new construction because why? It's the easiest thing you can get. Then after so many months into it, or even a year, they start to say, wow, this is really a lot of work and I'm not getting a lot of payoff. Not that there's anything wrong with having a new construction mix, but
Right.
the point is they're looking at, well, what's next? Well, absolutely what's next is one, you get this mindset for reoccurring revenue that comes from your service department. How do you get there? You have to
Right.
move from the production mindset within your company and within this division of it's a get or done mentality, which it is in production. Don't get me wrong, I've done that for
Totally.
years and run
Yeah.
operations. But when you come into the service department, it is a problem identifications and solution providing mindset. And that's
Yeah.
really what takes you to the next level. And that's what the client wants at this level.
Agreed. And we start to look at next level, right? And then this is a topic I'm very fond of is maintenance agreements and how these operate, right? Of trying to make these the foundation of that repeatable revenue, instead of instead of just being in a reactive environment where you're waiting for lead calls to come in, being able to get maintenance agreements and maintenance programs in place, so that you're consistently scheduling proactive visits and consistently creating those touch points that we talked about with your customers. And so that's a big thing with FCS that we try and help contractors with as well is the management of these maintenance agreements. They're a lot to keep up with, right? John, I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of contractors that are just like, I have no clue where to start, or I have no clue how to keep up with this. What would you say would be some input on your thought process for maintenance contracts?
So, we all know what reactive is. Reactive is you get a
Right.
phone call, you go out and you fix the leak and you
You
move
wait for
on,
the phone
right?
to ring.
So
Yeah.
wait for the phone to ring. And that is a good part of all
It
service
works
companies is you have
sometimes.
clients for
Yeah.
that. But when you move into that proactive or the maintenance, the biggest problem is people ask me, it's not working. I can't sell these. I can't get any
Right.
of these. And we start digging into, well, why? How do you approach how you go into the client with these? And the problem with the approach is they're going in to try to sell them the same way. And I would go into, let's say, I won't name any big store names, an electronics store. And
Yeah.
I'm decided on my purchase, and they will not leave me alone from there to the cashier and out the door that I have to buy an extended warranty, some sort of agreement, some sort of maintenance, because that mindset tells me it's what's best for them. What has to happen when you're selling these, you have to show the owners their return on investment, their ROI. It's not about you, it has to
Yeah.
be about them. Once that starts to go into place within any company that I've worked with and others that I haven't that I know about, they're actually moving into that, and they're so all of a sudden this becomes a huge part of your business. But I want to touch on one other thing. You mentioned about management. If I
Yeah.
learn the whole sales process and get these down, where do I next make my biggest mistakes as a contractor? Actually following through, scheduling the inspections when they need to happen, and doing what I said I'm going to do when we close the deal. That's what the
Exactly.
software comes in. It manages it. You can set your reminders, your dates, what needs to be done. You've got your notes, you got your inspection reports, you've got everything in one spot that can either be shared through a portal with a client, or I prefer to go in and show the client their portal and do that one-on-one with them.
Well, exactly. And we talked about earlier about service being intimidating for contractors, just the amount of work it takes to keep up with it. I would say maintenance agreements is that next item that I hear people intimidated by or struggling with. Most contractors I meet with will, yeah, we've tried to get maintenance plans in place. There's just a lot to keep up with, right? And that's usually a really big pain point for people while we're looking at the software and evaluating it from the business. And so that's where in FCS, this RTM report, which stands for rooftop maintenance. I get asked all the time, what does RTM stand for? It's for rooftop maintenance, is giving you the oversight across all of your active maintenance agreements of being able to keep up with them. When's the next inspection need to be done? Classifying between reactive and proactive agreements, being able to see property information, associated invoices with each agreement. And then as you guys will see when I get into the platform, being able to just take these and drag them right to your power board. And we actually, inside of FCS, have a dedicated RTM workflow that will walk your guy in the field through doing a service ticket and a roof inspection just in one seamless process. Just to kind of hammer in again that touch point concept of anytime you guys step foot out on these facilities or on these buildings, of being able to constantly identify additional repairs like we talked about in budgeting, and part of inspections too, of constantly stocking the shelves. So, our RTM tool does a great job of helping you guys make sure that these agreements don't slip through the cracks, and it ultimately help you keep track of your customers' portfolio a lot easier, right? Because at the end of the day, like I want to keep coming back to, is having the customer continue to choose you. When you can make it easy for them to do business with you, they keep doing business with you. You provide the oversight of the photos, the repair details, the invoice information, all in real time. And even in the portal, there's the ability for customers to be able to request service work instantly. So whether it's a repair or whether they're proactively choosing repairs that they want to do, I'm sorry, whether it's a leak or if they're proactively choosing repairs, there's easy buttons for it. They can click the big red button and fill out a leak request, which again, I'm going to show, but it's just at the end of the day going to give your customer the confidence to continue to choose you, and again come back to one of my favorite topics, which is becoming their roofing department. They know that when they have roof leaks or when they have issues, you're the resource. It's not just a commodity. I got a leak, who should I call? They look someone up. They know that your roofing company is going to be the resource for that. And truthfully, at the end of the day, this is the ultimate goal of the life cycle, and everything we're teaching here is for you to become your customer's roofing department, guiding them from the inspection process through the budgeting and planning stages into doing the service work, and then eventually into getting the roof replacement without it having to go out to a big bid environment and get in a lowest price wins battle, and get away from that business model. You don't want to just be their contractor, you want to be their partner. And those partnerships, like we said, are just naturally going to feed you those roof replacements and those bigger opportunities as that life cycle comes full circle. I mean, this is the model that's the most successful contractors in the country run, and they run it really well. So the key is being able to take our model that we've designed the software around and then utilize the software itself to make that process as seamless, and as smooth as possible for you. I mean, John, like we talked about with your introductions, you've worked at a bunch of top 100 companies. You guys ran this model, right?
Yeah, and if I could, I just want to take a couple of minutes here and kind of go through
Yeah,
that, right?
let's do it.
So
Yeah.
going back, as you introduced me, 45 years as a contractor, which means I'm just old and in the industry a long time, right? But there's
No, it
more to
means you're
that.
wise.
So it
Yes.
means you start out and you've
Yeah,
gone through a lot of painful processes throughout your career.
totally.
That's what it really means. So when I first started realizing that service actually had a place within a roofing company other than just going out and fixing leaks with your foreman when you had a rainy day and nothing else to do,
Yeah,
was somewhere between 85 and 87, right? So we're going way back. Then I started saying, well, I'll put two people on this permanently. And I remember being my father said, you're never going to keep them busy. Well, guess what? I not only kept them busy, I kept two
yep,
more busy. And we were up to six people. Six people in the 80s was a fairly good sized service department because the concept was
yeah,
new, right? But what I started realizing after that is, hey, don't let me just fix your leaks. Let's sit down and have a meeting. It's probably before we even knew about roof maintenance agreements. Let's get an agreement
totally.
together where I can come in and solve your problems beforehand. Now, the only missing component is everything back then was Polaroids, paper, nailed in a file, and it was a lot to keep track
Yeah,
of, which our
yep,
software makes it easier. But here's the difference. This is what I want to explain because there's always naysayers out there about
oh
how
yeah,
this works. Okay, I'm John the roofer. I'm going out and I'm going to fix your leaks. And that's all I do. And I haven't taken it any further, and you're calling me constantly. So I'm going to get a shot at your re-roof, more than likely. But the problem is when you bring me in, you're going to absolutely bring in 2 to 3 other people because all I am is John the roofer that you can count on to take care of your leaks. But that relationship hasn't blossomed past that. Now, if I come in, selling a maintenance agreement right off the bat to my client is extremely difficult, and I will not admit other than that because it is. How do you do it? That reactive agreement. As soon as I go in and can fix your leak for 900, 1200, whatever it may be, you have what? Confidence. You paid for something that I actually was able to deliver. Then I can come in and talk to you about how I can take your problems out of your hands and become the person you can go to solve those. Now, when it rains or we move on to the cycle, I'm not just John the roofer that can come fix the leaks. The call becomes, oh, don't just call John, he'll take care of it. The call is, you know what, don't worry about it. Give John a call. He's going to come in and take a look at it, and the
right.
solution is going to be handled, and we get to move on. Now, when it comes time for that re-roof, and I've been in a long time, so I'm not going to tell you you're going to be the only one bidding in it, but I
Right, right.
guarantee you're going to be driving the locomotive and not one of the cars following behind. And if you do your job correctly, you'll steer this roof right into your own bucket of work and continue on and do it.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And that's what we hope to see for all our customers, for all the people that we, our prospective customers of ours is, everything we can to help put you in the best position to be successful. And, what we're going to do now is actually walk through the platform. I'm going to show you how you can run service tickets in FCS, and how you can navigate all this information. We're going to go from taking a leak call or taking a repair and pushing it all the way through documentation into doing an invoice. So let me go ahead and share my screen here so you guys can see. So bear with me for 1 second while we turn off the sharing. Do this. And if you guys can confirm with me that you see this, John and Maddie. Are you able to see the system here now? All right, fantastic.
Yep, see everything.
So all right, awesome. So we're gonna run through, I won't spend too much time on some of like the contact formats and stuff that we've done in other sessions. I'm just gonna go right into one of my customers. We'll say Rand Enterprises is one of my clients. We've got a whole online profile. We have their entire portfolio laid out. They have a certain amount of properties that are currently within our system. And we're gonna take this first one, this demo building. Since I've gone out and done an inspection, I've put budget plans in place. Everything I need about this building in order to be able to service them is right here at my fingertips. I can click this add edit deficiencies button, and this is going to show me but I choose a roof section. So I click that and say, what section do I want to look at? All of the active repairs that currently exist on this roof section. So things we've identified from previous inspections that we've done during previous service visits. These are all the active deficiencies that currently live on one of these individual roof areas. And we see a couple other things that pop up here. This blue RTM rooftop maintenance flag is showing up. This is indicating that there is an active maintenance agreement on at least one of these roof sections. And the same concept applies for warranty as well, that there is at least one active warranty. So as I come down, and we can, the other items we'll touch on later dates, but our focus today is service. When we go over to the service tab and look at managing this customer, the first thing it shows me is my complete service history of every visit that we've had with this client. So every repair, along with the tracking, the documentation is all just a click away. I can also then go and navigate to the service button here that's going to show me different values that I can set up for my client. If you have agreed upon NTEs, or if you guys have different labor rates for this building, that you've agreed upon with your customer, you can structure those so that they're automated. Warranty information is all loaded in, but then property specific information. So you can also do this on a company level, but if there's certain check-in procedures or procedures that your people need to follow while they're at these locations, they can all be written in and pre-done right here for this customer, so that the tech will have it on the mobile device when they get out there. If there's different payment terms or invoicing requirements, all of this can be preset ahead of time. If I click on this RTM, this is going to show me my maintenance agreement management. You would load the actual contract in right here, fill out the contract values if it's a proactive agreement versus reactive. Once you choose the frequency of the agreement, the system is going to tell you when the next service inspection needs to take place, and we'll navigate to that later. But in the toolbox, there's the RTM report that will let you pull up and see all your future inspections and when they need to happen. And just like under the service tab, you can have specific maintenance notes that need to be mentioned or that people may need to be aware of. Invoicing notes. So everything you need to keep up with these maintenance agreements is right at your fingertips. And there's a couple different workflows that we can run through. I can run through taking one of these preset repairs and pushing it over to the service department and segue it from sales to service, or I can initiate a time and material dispatch, which is probably what we're going to do for this workflow. But I do still want you guys to be able to see the ability to go in. And when we started and we did a roof inspection earlier on, the system, when we scheduled that inspection through our activities, will have created a lead that goes into your sales funnel. And as that goes through your sales funnel, after you've gone out and quoted work, you then have the ability to take it and navigate through your sales funnel and say that now, let's say we've sold a roof repair, and I have the option just to send that right to my service department. And when I do that, it's going to ask me to go through and choose from that list of deficiencies what it is we're pushing over to the service department. So I can navigate my deficiency list here and go in and actually select these deficiencies so that the before picture, the description of the work, the price, the location will transfer over to my service department so that they have an advantage. They know what they're going out there to fix. There's already a picture identified. There's a location with the deficiency pinpointing of where the repair needs to be completed. So a very simple, seamless process to be able to take repairs that you've sold and get them from one team to another and segue over to service. These are custom fields you can set up for the opportunity. The other example would be the customer reaches out and they go, hey, I've got a bad leak. And in that instance, you would come in and you would click this red service dispatch button. What that will do is then pull up a work order page where you can go out and fill out the details for this request. So you can go through and choose what section the leak is on. So if you notice there, when I switched to office, that RTM and warranty flag went away because they're not activated on that roof section. When I go back to warehouse, there they are. The primary site contact will populate based on what you have set up for the record, but you can also adjust that if needed. And then you have your priority. Your priority is a customizable list that you guys are able to set up, but what it's going to do is it's effectively going to choose your labor rate. So this is all done in the settings in the back end where you guys are able to customize. I mean, this doesn't have to say emergency. You guys can make this be whatever you need. But let's say in this case, they need us out there within 24 to 48 hours. If the customer reached out and they sent you pictures or anything that they may have, you can load those to the work order ahead of time. But then we want to put in some notes. So customer called and has a bad leak. And that's why we use these cool Grammarly tools to do spell check. But it goes in and you fill out the notes, and I'll leave the misspelling just so we can see, because the notes that are input here, you can provide visibility to the technicians in the field so that the dispatcher can provide this information. There is also an opportunity here where you're again reminded of the active deficiencies. So if you wanted to include one of these into the ticket, you could select get it done from this list. But in this example, we're just going to move forward with doing the leak. So I'm going to click send dispatch. When I do that, the system's then going to create a work order and put it in the dispatched stage. Now, you guys have the user settings and can control the notifications for who within your organization and for your customers, what notifications they receive. But the job tracker has started at this point. So your customer would get or could get, again, it's up to you, an email notification saying, hey, we've acknowledged your request. And at that point, it now comes down to you guys internally to get this scheduled. The same thing applies if a service manager needs to be notified that a new request has come in. They could be notified that, hey, you got a new service ticket added, which also will appear on the dispatch board, which the dispatch board is your list, basically your job list of all the service tickets. You can go, there's all kinds of filters you can adjust this thing by, but we're going to go back into that work order we're working on here. And I need to get it into the hands of a technician. You'll notice it pulled the labor rate based on the response time. The invoice type was chosen automatically based on the fact that I did a T&M ticket from the quick dispatch button. But now I'm going to click on Power Board here so I can get this in the hands of a technician. And what this is going to do is it's going to pull up a scheduling tool that will show your service crews over here on the left and then their availability. Hopefully your board is all filled up and has tickets all over the place. But you'll notice over on the left, this is your bin of unscheduled work orders. So since I entered the power board through a work order, it's highlighting the ticket that we're working on so that I can quickly get this assigned. You'll also notice there's a legend over here showing the type of service work that this is. So I'm able to take this demo building and drag it over to one of my guys and say we want him out there tomorrow, and then choose the time. I'm fine with 8 a.m., but you could select a new time if needed and click save. And that's all you're going to need to do to schedule the ticket. It's now going to automatically update that service status. It's going to set the arrival ETA for whatever time you scheduled it for, and then the appropriate notifications are going to go out. Your customer, your people internally, but then also your service crew. they're going to get a text or an email, depending on the notifications that you've set up, that lets them know, hey, you've received a new service request. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and switch sharing my screen here, and show from the standpoint of what a technician is now going to see as we walk through this. So it looks like it's switched over, so we should be good there. John, anything you want to add before I jump into the service tech about just from an operational or a process standpoint for getting tickets scheduled and assigned?
No, it was a great demonstration. I think everybody should have got a very good overview. One
Yeah,
thing that I always liked about it was where you brought up about whether or not the emails are sent or not sent, and
right,
they're customizable, which is so important. Because I had clients that only want to be notified when they were resolved. I had other
totally.
clients that wanted to know every single stage along the way, and I had other clients that didn't want to know anything except when are you there? When did you arrive on the job? So that's the
Exactly.
key. Is it's available to customize as you need it. So you must ask your client how they want to communicate, and then that way you can set your software up correctly to do it.
Exactly. And that's that level of communication and transparency that we've been talking about. And from the software standpoint, we can also make those notifications really branded to your organization. So it's got your logo, it's got the tracker bar, it'll have the picture of the overhead aerial of the building. Really impressive notifications that go out to your customer. So we'll focus on the tech now and see, here on the mobile, we're going to go through and you can limit what your user sees from a mobile capacity. For example, I may not want my technician to have access to the list of contacts. They may only see schedule and time card. And if you're using our time tracking solution as well in conjunction with doing service, your technician would come into the time card and he would punch in to start his day. And when he punches in to start his day, he can just go do all the subsequent work orders and punch out at the end of the day, and it'll make a time card master report that consolidates all of that information. So it is important they can come in and punch in at the start of the day so that all those jobs will get tracked for their timesheet. But otherwise, we're going to go into our schedule here and go down and see the tickets that were assigned. Right here under my service ticket, we see that there's a leak for this demo building that's in the arrival ETA stage. So all I have to do is click on that ticket and it's going to pull up all the work order information. So from here, I can go in and see dates, times, locations, and then the time log down here at the bottom. So if we wanted to go through and say, look at our notes, I can pop that open. And this is the notes that were entered from the dispatcher when we were filling out the work order, so that this is what your office can communicate with the technician. It's internal, so this is something that just your guys would be able to see. It's not necessarily going to be visible by all your clients. So from this, we then have the additional notes option. Additional notes would be if you had building specific information. As you'll see in this case, warranty information populates because that exists on the roof section. And then there's the deficiency button. The deficiency button would be if we were doing like a contract repair or something where we knew what we were going out here to fix and we pushed it from our sales or another team into the service department. When they click that, it would show the technician the before picture and the details of what they're going there to fix. But in this case, we need to identify the problem ourselves because we're doing a leak ticket. So the next stage would just be to click Start Travel up here at the top of the screen. So once I click Start Travel, hypothetically that the technician would turn their phone off and they would drive to the location. And once they've arrived, they just click back into the ticket. They can review all this information again. You'll see the time log recording right there at the bottom, showing that it's documented as the travel time. And when they arrive at the facility, they're going to go ahead and they're going to click Punch In. Once they click punch in, it's going to start off and it's going to show the aerial image, basically verifying that your technician is at the right location. So if they're at the right building, they're just going to leave yes selected, and then they'll go ahead and click next. At this stage, if you've done a front of the building picture, this is the same thing. It's like a verification step that they're at the right place. If there's not a front of the building image, they can click the camera down here in the bottom right and upload that photo. But at this point, they would go ahead and move next. And now we just are going to choose. We saw in our dispatch that the leak was on the warehouse. So we'll click into the warehouse. When we do that, our job now is to identify the problem. What's causing the leak? And this can either be done by video or by adding photos. So the video is only going to be available, in an online environment, but if you want to record that for documentation, it's a great additional resource to have available. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to click add problem here. And the first step is going to ask me to identify, where'd you find the leak? Where was it located? So you can move around, drop a pin, and then go ahead and click next. Once you've identified the location, it's going to ask you to reference your deficiency library or your list of dropdowns to choose the issue. So you guys can set up different categories. I don't think it's sharing when I show the dropdowns, but you can have different categories set up based on roof system, or these are customizable lists. So it can be whatever you guys need it to be, but you're going to go in and then select the issue. So you're going to come down and choose the problem itself and just select it there. So like in this case, I'm just going to go and say that there's damage coping, choose whether it's an emergency or a remedial repair, and then enter in the quantity. So I'm just going to say 1. At that point, we would go ahead and move next, and it takes us into our problem photo stage. You will notice that it automatically populated the problem description based on the deficiency libraries that you guys would have set up. And this is optional, whether you want your text to be able to edit this on the field and use it as a suggestion, or if that's just going to be locked for them. But this is now where we can start taking our before pictures. So it's very simple. We talked about trying to make this easy for the guys in the field. All you have to do is click the camera in the bottom right. And when you're live out there with your phone, it's going to ask you, do you want to take a live photo or choose from your device? Like I'm going to choose from my device here and take the photo. So once you've identified the photo, you are allowed to do 4 before pictures and then 4 after pictures per individual repair. So it's a limit of 8 photos per repair. So I can continue to add more photos if I need. If I don't like a photo, I can retake it. But once that's completed, I'll go ahead and now move next. At this point in the workflow, the technician would put his device away and actually do the work and complete the repair, which, fast forwarding in time a little bit, we'll say the repair has been completed, and you'll notice that correction is flashing. This is where we now want to take our after pictures. So we'll go on and click to add some after pictures. It automatically populated a description of what we needed to do in order to resolve the problem. So we'll just click our camera and then show our after picture of the repair being complete. So we're going to load that in. Again, I can do 3 more, so I can have 4 total after pictures and cycle through this. Now that I'm good with my pictures, I can go ahead and move next and either continue to identify additional problems or just go ahead and move on to what are some of the next steps, which right here brings up a dispatch approval. This is an optional an optional tool that you guys can utilize where your service manager or someone in the office would need to review and approve all of this information before the technician could close out of the ticket. We understand that that's not always a possibility where you want your guys waiting around for someone to approve, especially when they're really busy. So like I said, it is optional, but gives an opportunity where they can write in some notes to the office, but then they can go out and fill out additional labor, right? Let's say they had a helper with them. So with me, we'll say Cedric was with me during this call. I can duplicate my travel and labor time for him as my helper. I could then go in and say, what materials did I use while I was fixing this repair? So I can go in and these materials may not match the repair itself, but it's just the material library I have. And you add the quantities of the material. It's not going to show technicians any material pricing, even though the material pricing is populated for your office staff on the back end. But that's not the business of a technician as the way we have it set up. If I send the request and don't require a dispatch approval, I can move on to one of these next steps, which gives me an opportunity here to create a quick bid. Creating a quick bid is while we're out here during the service call, if we want to identify any additional problems and create a separate proposal to be able to send along with the invoice. I'm a big fan and a big promoter of these quick bids and doing these additional upsells while you're out here on a repair. And I want to stop for a second too and get John's feedback a little bit of, John's thoughts on doing quick bids or service upsells in the middle of a work order.
Yeah, so whatever you want to, excuse me, whatever you want to name them, doesn't matter. Everybody actually, you can market these very well for your own company, right?
Right.
So you can even market them as you want to do them, but why are they important? So just I'm going to take 2 minutes of your time here on this to jump back. What you showed in
Totally.
the app is a process. That is a correct process. All right. So
Right.
how do I know that? Because I've taken where I've had techs that have followed the process correctly, teach them how to take the correct pictures and what to take the pictures of and follow it exactly the way you laid it out. And then,
Right.
of course, like anybody else in the business, I had techs that refused to follow it until we got to that point where they came on board. So
Yeah.
where does it look? I'm a studier of data. Everyone knows that. That's what I love to do to get my results. So when I looked at it, the profitability, the customer retention, and fewer callbacks on leaks, the ones that followed the process were leading the pack. They had the most profit, the least amount of callbacks, and the most customer retention. So we know where the other ones fell. Now, when we add this mix into it, that quick bid mix, because hey, there's something
Yeah.
over here that needs to be done, or maybe within the next 2 months we need to get this done because, again, what are you doing now? You're doing that proactive and maintenance type of work with this. The techs that got onto this were upselling probably if they, let's just say for an example, if the quick bid went out for a year, they had $150,000 worth of quick bids that they priced doing this system. Let's use an example.
Yeah.
The ones that really got onto it and understood the process to it, they were closing on 75 to 80% of the
That's
quick
what I
bids
was
that
gonna
went out.
say.
So
Yeah.
that's real life. That's real life data right there. So I can't
And that's
stress
huge.
enough how important it is you went over it.
It is. It's huge to be able to do those additional upsells. 75, 80%. Again, that goes back to the relationship with your client. They trust you as their roofing department. You're out there fixing one problem, and hey, I noticed this too. So that's awesome. That's great data. I appreciate you sharing your experience with that too. And if I can go through and I'm probably going to skip doing the quick bid here, but this is where you could go through and create these documents. QuickBid has a workflow where the technician could upsell directly on the device. That's typically not a situation that you find happen in commercial where the technician has the ability to communicate with the decision maker to approve the additional repairs. But the most likely workflow that we see with our clients is the technician will document it, and then the service manager or whoever's coordinating this back in the office, because QuickBid will actually make a repair proposal PDF with everything filled out, pricing, pictures, descriptions. And what you can do is attach that to an invoice. So when you send the customer the invoice, it's here's your invoice. And then FCS also creates like your before and after report. We call it a supporting document that shows all the before and after pictures. So it goes, here's your invoice, here's what your invoice is for. And by the way, we found these additional items. Other situations is if you have a good enough relationship with your client, whoever's in the office or can communicate with that customer can reach out and say, hey, I've got a guy out there right now. He noticed these other things. I'm going to shoot you over this report. Let us know if you want to get that done while we're out there too. So it's just a very, very powerful tool to help maximize your profitability, not just as the service department as a whole, but on each and every work order as well. So one of the final processes of walking through this step, I know I have to be cautious of everyone's time here. We've got about 12 minutes left. Is going through a walkthrough. So if you have your technicians check out with someone in the field, they can go, hey, here's what was causing your leak, and kind of navigate through the pictures. Here's what it looks like now. I fixed it. And then they can get a name and a signature. So they can go through and grab have them print their name. And then I can't sign on my computer, but this is where they would sign right here in this white box. And it's going to stamp that then into the supporting document or the before and after report. So at this stage, it will give the technician another option to add additional labor if required, enter in additional materials, or close out the dispatch, which is what we're going to do. So we'll close that dispatch out. That service, that work order comes off the service technician's device. So it's now reached a resolved stage. He can't do anything with it. It goes off and he moves on to the next ticket. But then back in the office, and I'm going to switch my screen share here, the office will get notified from those notifications that, hey, this work's been resolved. So they know it's time to come in and review it. It also would have notified them when the technician arrived on site with the in progress stage. So I'm just going to refresh my screen here, and you'll see that these status updates have completed, when it was in progress, when the work was resolved. The map has now updated with the location of the repair. I can drop down the legend and show that we fixed the damaged coping at that area. And then all the notes, everything's right here. I can come down, look at my pictures. They all get loaded right into the work order. So there's no more having to chase this stuff down or wait for the tech to bring the information back and then try and navigate through everything they documented and figure out what goes where. It's all organized, it's all detailed. So at this point now that, and you'll notice down here, I could see that there was a quick bid proposal that I can just go ahead and attach right to this section right here. It's a button click away. But from this, after it's reached the resolve stage, the service manager, whoever is the designated individual, has a responsibility to review this information and say that it's confirmed and ready for invoicing. So we'll go take this and switch it into the confirmed stage, update our status here. And then once it's hit confirmed, the invoice option will now be available. So whoever's responsible for sending out the invoice will now get notified. And you'll notice then we clicked through it fast. So these are really low quantities, but the travel, the labor, the materials, everything was documented based on the presets you guys set up when you do the system. And it's giving you a suggested invoice price. Now, you do have the option to flip this into edit mode and go through and, if you don't want it itemized, you can switch it to simple invoice. If you need to change the billing contacts, if you want to write custom descriptions of the work performed. But the big thing is it will job cost every single work order. So you have your billable rates over here on the left. You have your actual over on the right. So this is what it cost you in order to complete this repair. And you can see your profit and your gross margin right here at this point of sale for that invoice. So now, just in the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all the other settings, but we flip this back and click send client invoice. And the system's now going to generate the invoice PDF along with that before and after report I was telling you. So right here is your invoice, which will have your logo. You guys can kind of brand these a little bit, your terms and conditions, then all your before and after pictures, the date, the time, the location, the signature. Here's your bill. Here's what your bill's for. It's clear, it's transparent, and hopefully you're going to get paid quickly for it. Over here on the left is the email that's going to go out to the customer. We can click send email, and it's going to then shoot that invoice out. And then another discussion for a later date is all of that data that's getting processed, the invoice, the transaction information. We can then set up an interface to be able to get it into your accounting program, whether it's through an export or import or utilizing our new API that's part of the Amplify release. There's different options we can do for that. So I know, we've gone through a lot. There's still more to this. There's great service reports that show profitability of your service crews, your departments, everything you need to manage this. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we need to kind of hop over into the next segment. So John, anything else you want to add about that kind of final workflow from the tech, from the invoice, from everything from that?
Yeah, I mean, for everybody to understand the importance of having a good workflow set up, look at it this way. If you're a roofing contractor, until you develop a safety culture, not just a safety enforcement in your company. Once the safety culture is there, you make money. This is the same way. Once you get the workflows down pat and you get everybody into that life cycle mentality and flow and build that culture, that's where this starts to pay off for you.
Fantastic. And just again, I know we covered a lot. Anyone else that's in attendance that wants to dive deeper into this is what I do all day long. I'm happy to hop on one of these calls with you guys and go through and talk about your process, dive deeper into the system, go over everything you guys need. But the key things, I always try and wrap this up with the key takeaways I want you guys to do is through the life cycle process, inspections, and the budgeting steps, set the stage for service. Utilizing FCS to help keep your techs and your clients, everyone connected in real time. Utilize service to build predictable revenue, build out your long-term relationships, do everything you can to become your customer's roofing department. Maintenance programs turn one-time jobs into predictable revenue in the future. And ultimately, the big takeaway is when you're able to create an environment that your clients depend on to manage the roofs on their facility, you become the way that they manage their roofs. It drives retention, it drives relationships, and should long-term lead to you being that primary resource. Any other big things, John, that you want our audience to little nuggets that they can take away from everything we've been saying?
Well, I think just in closing on my end, the way to look at this is we're bombarded with techniques and gimmicks and different ways of doing things. With life
Yep,
cycle and service, it is a strategy. And strategies will always win out over any technique or anything. Techniques are just a small part of any puzzle. Strategy is
totally.
the overall policy, and that's what we're learning as a strategy.
Exactly. And that's ultimately what the FCS life cycle is, right? And we're excited to be always be able to continue to provide solutions to our customers. Anyone that already does business with us, we have FCS Amplify that the beta testing and the early adopter program started this morning. So we've already gotten great feedback with that, and it's basically our newest release of FCS that enables even easier workflows than I just showed, reducing steps in that process and, our modern version of the system. So yeah, I mean, we go through and segue. If anyone has any questions, now would be a great time to funnel those over. And, if not, I just really appreciate everyone's time joining our session and continuing with the life cycle. We're going to be doing the next stage. This one's going to be on replacements and kind of finalizing and wrapping out the life cycle. That's going to be early December is when we're targeting to do that with everyone's schedule. So keep an eye out for emails and notifications from us and from Madison to let everyone know if you want to join that session as well. But other than that, if we have any questions, now would be a good time. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody coming.
Yeah, just to build off of Zach, if you have a question, even if we don't have, in the 2 minutes left we have left, we can answer it in the follow-up email. So still definitely submit it to the question module. Otherwise, you can also email us with any
Yeah.
questions and reach out to us with anything that you have. All right. Yes, we are definitely able to send a summary of today. We'll be sending out a recording of this. If you want like any further information, we can just work with you to get whatever kind of materials you need to, help better understand what we went through today. And yes, gotcha. I have all of your emails as well too. Awesome. Cool. Well, I
And we'll
think
make sure everyone
so.
gets a copy of the recording. And like Mandy said,
Yes,
if you want any information, I have no problem. We can share a PDF version of the slide decks and everything we went through. We're happy to provide you guys anything that helps.
absolutely. Look for an email tomorrow with the recording. Um, it should be coming out 24 hours after these webinars end. So if you also make sure that we're marked, it should be coming from info@java.com. So if you don't see it in your inbox, maybe check your other inboxes or your spam.
The other thing I want to mention too is it's a lot to implement these systems, and you got to have good processes, right? You have to have good regulations and SOPs and everything put in place in order for these things to operate well in your business. And that's something John's able to help you guys with as well. He works one-on-one with contractors to help define SOPs and put better processes in place. So feel free to reach out to John as well for anything beyond the software that you guys might need help with.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for everyone for coming. And we'll see you at the next Lunch and Learn in early December so we can go over replacements. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye now.
And thanks, John, as always.
Thank you.
Bye bye.